Welcome back to this special edition of the Journal Editorial Report. I'm Paul Gigot. Well, the summer is off to a rough start for President Obama, with scandals at the VA and the IRS continuing to plague his administration. The Supreme Court handing him some high-profile rebukes, and House Republicans announcing they'll sue over executive action abuses. Things certainly aren't any better on the international front, as a series of crises have revealed a U.S. foreign policy in shambles. All these setbacks seem to be taking their toll on the president's poll numbers, with his job approval now firmly stuck in the low 40s, and a majority of Americans believing he is no longer able to lead the country. Wall Street Journal columnist and Fox News contributor Karl Rove joins us with more. So thank you for joining us again, Karl.
You bet.
You were in a White House in the 6th year, which had low approval ratings somewhere close to this president's. How do you see this president standing compared to previous presidents at this stage in his term?
Well, the 6th year is a terrible time to be in the White House. It's like being going to the proctologist each day. I mean, it's not pleasant at all. And President Obama has bad numbers, just as President Bush did. But I think these are fundamentally different situations, circumstances.
So?
Well, President Bush, first of all, suffered from Katrina, an uncontrollable event, largest storm to hit America in recorded modern history, and the failure of local units of government who have the principal responsibility of dealing with the aftermath of those disasters was blamed on him. And rather than spending his time pointing his finger at the governor of Louisiana or the mayor of New Orleans, he just accepted the responsibility and jumped in. And then second of all, we had an active, ongoing war in Iraq that was not going well at all. And until the surge was announced after the 2006 elections, things began to turn around in 2007 and 2008. But
his approval. But what is it about the president's standing right now that if you were in the White House, you would say, "All right, Mr. President, we need to address"?
Yeah, some of these are self-inflicted. I think the tone is really bad out of the White House. I don't understand why the president believes that whenever he gets into difficulty, the answer is to dig deeper into the partisanship of the moment. The president, I think, any president is bigger when they rise above partisanship. And this president, when he gets into difficulty like he is in now, it turns and becomes an even more harsh partisan. We saw it earlier this week when the president went to the Key Bridge in Washington, D.C. to push for his answer to the highway funding bill. We have not had a highway funding bill for 6 years, and he's trying to get one using pay-fors that have clearly been unacceptable since the time he came into office. He's proposed these same sets of tax increases to fund a variety of things, and they've never gone anywhere. So, but rather than talking about it and trying to find common ground, he goes out and excoriates the Republicans, saying, "My proposal is not socialism. It's factual. Right. So sue me." I mean, the language is just unduly harsh.
But here's the argument. I think if you inside the White House, they might make. Look, yeah, the president's approval ratings are in the low 40s, but look at Congress. They're in the high teens. So we can deflect attention from us and focus on, in fact, the failure of Congress, and therefore they will take the bulk of the blame, and we can minimize our losses in the midterms.
Well, look, I think the object is to minimize the losses in the midterm. I'm not certain I agree that it's just blaming Congress. What I think he's trying to do is rally his base. He thinks this kind of language inflames the Democratic left, and so they're going to seize on every opportunity they can to sort of get that same base energized and ready to turn out. For example, this week's decision on the Hobby Lobby, the immediate response was to go and say they want to take away your right to contraception, and they were very open about it. They gave number of interviews to say, well, this is going to be great for us because we're going to be able to rally single women to us in the fall. They traditionally don't turn out in midterms, but this is a decision by the Supreme Court. Now, so but I'm not certain that works very well. They had the same strategy in 2012 12, and they won, but they won with a smaller number of votes than they got in 2008. They need to enthuse people. They need to get particularly independents to come off of the bench and come onto the field for them. And I don't think this strategy does anything except appeal to the hardcore left of the Democratic Party.
Isn't it a little late to enthuse people here in this cycle? And as I look at the polling head-to-head, the president's approval rating is down, but look at the polling numbers about who the American people want to control Congress, Democrats or Republicans, and they're very close. Republicans do not have a big lead. In fact, in some polls, they're a point or two behind.
Yeah. Well, to look at the polls, though, at this point in 2010, it was roughly similar. Democrats need to go into a midterm election when they hold the White House with a lead on that question, a clear lead on that question. Otherwise, by the election day, it ends up being that the natural gravitational pull of a midterm election is for people to say, you know what, it's my chance to send a message to the guy in charge and to vote no on the president. And we're likely to see that this year. I do think it's going to be a very close election for the Senate because of tactical reasons, not strategic considerations. The Democrats have on the field some of the only people who could try and hold on successfully to these seats, and they're running very effective localized campaigns. They're trying to inoculate themselves, insulate themselves by distancing themselves subtly as much as they can from the president.
What about the failure of immigration reform? It's clear the administration also thinks that could be a political advantage. The president lashed at Republicans as the responsible party this week. How do you think that's going to play in some of these key Senate races this year?
Well, I think it cuts both ways. I think it cuts generally against Republicans in states with significant Latino populations. For example, Colorado, this is going to be an issue. It's not going to be so much of an issue, say, in Alaska, for example.
No, but it could hurt Republicans in Alaska. Could hurt the Republican in Colorado, is what you're saying?
Yeah, well, it could in states with rapidly growing dynamic Latino populations. This matters. And the question is, are Republican candidates like Cory Gardner in Colorado going to distance themselves from a hard line on immigration and make themselves more inclusive and welcoming to Latino populations? The Hispanic population, Hispanic voters are able to differentiate between people. You know, they were able to, for example, give a much higher percentage of the Latino vote in Texas in 2012 to Republican candidates than they gave to Mitt Romney, for example. So they do distinguish between are you for solving this problem or are you against solving this problem? But it is long term. This is a real problem for Republicans. It's also, however, in the short term, a problem for the Democrats. If you go to some of these focus groups among Latinos, there's a high level of awareness that the president could have solved this problem when he had control of the Congress in 2009 and 2010 and didn't. And they have a very strong suspicion that he is content to use this as a political weapon rather than to get it solved.
All right, Carl, thank you. We'll be watching that issue and others still ahead.